Goes. I'm going to mute us. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. Welcome to the live stream. Yes, you're on the right live stream. This is the new intro music, at least for right now. I fucking love... Oh, come on! That song slaps so hard. It slaps so hard. It slaps so hard. Whew. That guy is awesome. Check him out. On YouTube, every single one. Like, I've always liked drum and bass, but you didn't know that about me. But it kind of faded out and stopped listening to it, and he is reviving drum and bass. So, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to the live stream. What do you think, Bloody?
It was good. I wasn't sure what you were going to play because the demo you played for me before was different than that. So that, yeah, it is much.
Yeah, well, I was trying to talk to you about, like, just the genre of drum and bass, and I just, like, grabbed a random drum and bass sample, but there's lots of different styles. But his shit is, every single song of his that I listen to, I'm like, this is so good. This is so good. I was like, fine, I just want to, this is my new intro. Anyway, we'll see if it sticks.
It feels very intense. So you got to keep up the energy, right?
I got to keep the energy up with, well, right. That's the only thing is it's very high energy. It's very intense. And then we come in here and we answer questions about FPV. So I don't know if that energy is going to, frankly, I think a lot of the viewers are going to be happy if that energy doesn't carry into the rest of the stream. Maybe a little bit unused to the change, but it's so good. It's so good. You want to know something interesting about that? None of those were actual Beastie Boys samples. He recorded all of those.
Nice.
Yeah, because you would need. There's a thing called mechanical licenses, and you may know this already, Blunty. I don't know, but maybe some of the viewers don't. You can cover any song you want. You don't have to get permission from the artist. You go to an agency, like I think ASCAP is one, and you just buy what's called a mechanical license. It's like $300, and it's a mandatory license. They can't deny you the right to cover a song. So you go, you buy the license, and you can cover the song without getting permission from the original artist. And so I'm guessing that's what he does with these songs that he samples, is he just recreates the samples. But it sure, yeah, sounds like the real thing. Anyway, but this is not a drum and bass appreciation stream. This is a stream about FPV, and we are going to be answering your questions about FPV in the chat. You guys are going to be asking questions here in the YouTube chat. And Blunty's going to be queuing them up. Killer Zebra thinks that was more dubstep than drum and bass. I see where you're going with that. There were some like booms. Yeah, I could see where you're going with that. Hang on a second. We got it.
I think it's if it had a halftime in the middle where it did more wubby stuff, I think it would be dubstep. Yeah. But I don't think it ever does like a dubstep breakdown, if that's part of it.
There's no break. Yeah. My bottle opener is failing me. I got it. It's a little bit dull. There we go. I got it. Shouldn't open bottles with that anyway. I could see it. It touches a little bit on dubstep. I'm going to be taking your questions. Blunty's going to be helping me queue them up. Taking questions, obviously, from the Discord over here. And also your super chats. That's it. Super chats. If you guys want to make sure I read your question, hit the $ down at the bottom and leave a super chat. We currently have no super chats, so get those queued up. We will typically go for about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, doing regular questions and bullshitting before we dive into the super chats and start running them down. And let's do that. Let's take questions or comments. When did the intro start taking amphetamines? Yeah. I don't know. People might be surprised to learn. I really dig that music. Like, you're not going to see me in a club, like, dancing, because I'm lame and don't like to go leave my house, but that music really freaking, it's good. Learned loads of new things about Bardwell this week. He used to wear leather trousers at Burning Man, and he knows jiu-jitsu. I took jiu-jitsu. This all came out from the interview I did with the FPV Spill the Tea podcast with the folks over on Limon's live stream, Ivan Efimov's live stream. We did like 2.5 hours, and there were some really good discussions. Blunty, I'm excited that he gave us permission to post some of the excerpts to the live stream clips channel, because I feel like a lot of that stuff was really good.
Yeah, those will be showing up in the next few days. I've already got a couple up on the live stream clips.
Yeah, they asked some good questions. So guys, keep an eye out for that, and there's links. If you go over to the Joshua Bardwell live stream clips channel, you'll see the clips over there, and there's links to the original live stream. They have a criminally low number of views, to be honest with you. It's a great stream. Anybody who'll talk to me for at 2.5 hours is obviously a person of taste. Let's see here. Let's take a question here from Christopher Concrete. going to start us off. I got my first drone, just a ducted 3-inch, since I can take the duct off. Can explain a bit about props. I wanted to buy replacements, but pitch 1mm or 1.5mm, wire 2.9 by 2.9 by 4 on Rotor Riot, but 3 by 4 by 3 elsewhere. I'm not sure I'm following, actually, this question. I thought you're buying a ducted 3-inch. It'd be nice to know what drone it is. I mean, the 2.9 versus the 3. What props is he even talking about? Let's see here. Drone parts. We got propellers. No, apparently propellers are not a part of a drone. Really? What? Oh, parts by frame. How about this? Cinewhoop. Do we have props? No. Okay, propellers are not part of a drone. Good to know, Blunty. I learned... Oh, here we are. Never mind, I take it back. So these are the HQ 3-inch. These are... I guess those are Cinewhoop props. They're a little bit of bullnose props. Just specifically for use with ducts. 3-inch HQ prop. Doesn't actually have the dimensions. That's interesting. Let's see. And then what else is he talking about? 2.9 by 2.9 by 4. Where is he seeing a 2.9 by 4? There we go. That's the quad blades. I mean, since it's a quad blade... so there's a trend. Hold on. There's a trend in like 5-inch props where some people will run 4.9-inch props because the smaller props are more responsive. And I wonder if that's what's going on here. We've got a quad blade prop. That extra fourth blade is going to cause extra load on the motors and create extra thrust. And I wonder if HQ has just gone down to a 2.9-inch to try and make the diameter a little smaller and make the prop a little more responsive as a counterpoint. You know, a 2.9-inch versus a 3-inch, those are all going to sort of work on a 3-inch Cinewhoop. They're just going to have different flight characteristics. None of them are going to be like right or wrong. As far as the pitch goes, 1 versus 1.5. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about there because like here the pitch on this prop is a 2.9-inch. I'm not really sure what you're referring to when you say 1 versus 1.5. I think the gist of your question is you want to buy props for your 3-inch. And the answer is props are not that expensive. They're usually $3 or $4 a set. And it's well worth trying different props and seeing what flight characteristics they have and how you like them. It's not that expensive to experiment, and I encourage people to experiment. Steve Tricks points out that 2.9-inch leaves a little more space between the ducts, and maybe some people want that. That may be true. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. We got a question here from Sam asking, do M10 GPS units still need the U-center fix with Betaflight 442? The fix for the M10 GPSs, where Betaflight cannot auto-configure an M10 GPS, my understanding is that's coming in Betaflight 4.5. So, yes, they still need the U-center fix until Betaflight 4.5. That's how I believe it's going to work. Big Data Pimp says it's hard to believe just 1/10 of an inch makes that big of a difference in responsiveness. Big Data Pimp, that'd be an interesting question. The 4.9 versus the 5 versus the 5.1. There's a lot of people who feel like they can feel the difference. It'd be interesting to see if like somebody like Chris Rosser, who measures prop responsiveness, could measure a difference. Let's see here. We got a question here from Blue Jay. Will I be able to use my sub 250 gram ducted Cinewhoop to film an outdoor concert at night that involves flying over the crowd? Let's break this down, Blue Jay, because I think I see where your question's going. The question is really, will the FAA be mad at me if I do this? Because obviously, yeah, you can do it. Will I be able to do it? It's like when somebody would say, you would say, "Hey, Mom, can I have a piece of candy?" And she'd say, or this is more a dad joke than a mom joke, sorry. "Dad, can I have a piece of candy?" And say, "I don't know. Can you?" I mean, you can. The question is the FAA going to be mad about it? And let's break this down. It is outdoor. Since it's outdoors, you are in the national airspace when you're flying, and therefore the FAA believes that they have jurisdiction. I say believes that they have because that's going to be what they use to determine whether they come after you. And some people think they shouldn't, and I'm not touching that. That's why I put it that way. If you were indoors, if you were in a closed arena, then the FAA would have no jurisdiction, and you could do basically whatever you want within the realms of, what you might get sued for or anything. It's interesting because, there are some sports arenas where the top can open and close, right? You could be flying the exact same drone over the exact same people, and if the top of the arena opens, suddenly you're in the national airspace, and the FAA wants to regulate you. And if the top of the arena closes, you're no longer in the national airspace, and the FAA doesn't want to regulate you, which seems kind of silly. But that's how the rules are. Blunty, do you agree? Is that how the rules are? Am I off base there?
I'm sorry, I've been queuing questions. I wasn't listening.
If you're in a sports arena and they open the top of the arena to the sky, now you're in the national airspace. And they close the top of the arena, you're not in the national airspace anymore.
Yeah,
right?
That would be my understanding, yeah.
Kind of silly, but okay.
Yeah. It's like, if you have it's really weird because, how much, I don't think there's an official answer as to how much counts and how high the ceiling can be and how much it has to cover, right? Because there could be,
it's interesting.
If it's tent without net, if it's 20 feet high, if it's 40 feet high, if it's 100 feet high, right? Like, is part of it open and part of it closed? Is the garage door open mean you're outdoors for the entire garage? There's a lot of questions.
Oh, that's
people
interesting.
Have, right?
Yeah. Like, if you think about it, if I was I've always thought that what matters is that you're undercover. So, for example, if you're underneath, in some parts of the country, they got those riding rings where it's a great big covered barn, but the sides are open, right? Well, my thinking is that if you were flying underneath that cover, you're not in the national airspace. But someone might argue that having the open walls, but by that logic, could you have a house with an open window? And if you open the window, now you're in the national airspace. If you're in that arena and they roll back the ceiling one inch, are you in the national airspace? What if they roll back the ceiling 10 feet? What about 50 feet?
Yeah, and remember, we're not arguing. We're not arguing logic. I think we logically could answer questions. We're arguing rules, right? We don't know that. Yeah,
we know that FAA regulations often have no requirement to be based in logic. So. Yeah, if you're in a building and someone opens a skylight, suddenly the FAA comes around and says, "What are you doing? You're in the national airspace." So we understand this is bullshit, but
I'll just say that's a common thing I see a lot from people who want to do real estate shoots or building shoots. They want to fly in, and maybe they're only flying in like 3 feet, 5 feet. But am I outdoors? Am I in the airspace if I'm 3 feet out the front door? Right? I am, right? But I'm no plane or helicopter would ever be there, and I could never interfere with anything. So it's just very odd, right?
Yep, I agree. If you fly out onto a covered porch, what about then?
Right.
Okay, but none of that matters because in this case, you are in an outdoor concert at night. So you definitively, even in the realm of logic, you're in the national airspace. Unless, well, anyway. So the FAA is involved, and what do the FAA regulations say? Because you're filming a concert, we're going to guess that this probably is a 107 operation. It's possible that you are entirely 100% recreational. I've been to music festivals, and I see drones flying around, and my guess is that some of those drones are just some dude who brought a drone and put it up for fun, right? That was my guess. That person's content is arguably 100% recreational. But I'm going to guess that if you're asking this question and you're flying a Cinewhoop over a concert at night, that you're doing it as in partnership or you're working with the people putting on the concert, or in some other way it's a 107 operation. Once it's a 107 operation, the fact that your drone is sub 250 doesn't matter. 107 makes no distinction between sub 250 and over 250. Sub 250 exemption is only for recreational. Then we get to the categories of drone. And Blunty, this is a development that I haven't really completely internalized. There's different classes based on the weight and like whether they have exposed propellers and so forth. Do you know those like really well off the top of your head?
Check the link in chat.
Oh, great. Thank you, Blunty. Operations over people. So this is the rule for operations over people put out by the FAA. Blah, 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 blah. It permits routine operations of small unmanned aircraft over people moving vehicles at night under certain conditions. To determine if it would go over blah, blah, blah. Using a safety-based, risk-based approach, the small unmanned aircraft does not operate over non-participants who are not under a covered structure or in a stationary covered vehicle. So arguably, everyone at the concert is a participant. This could be covered by having them, like, you put a sign up at the entrance that says there will be drones flying over this event, and by entering this event, you consent to the drone flying over you. That's oftentimes when you see people doing, like, a fly-through of a bar or a big gathering, you're like, well, how did they get consent from all of those people? And the answer is they just put a sign up at the entrance, and by entering, you tacitly consent. So that's easy. Of course, if they didn't do that, then you'd have a problem. But we could easily make everyone at the concert a participant. It poses no undue hazard in the event of a loss of control. Some would argue that the sub 250 makes it inherently no undue hazard. And the small UAS does not operate in a careless or reckless manner. And that's just you, don't be a bonehead. But simply flying over people isn't inherently careless or reckless. So with those requirements are relatively easy to meet. And then we come to the operations over people categories. And you probably would fit under category 1. 250 grams or less, and no exposed rotating parts that would cause lacerations. So if it's sub 250 and has prop guards or ducts, you're good to go under category 1. And you're good to go. Although you're required to be compliant with remote ID, which if this is not a standard, this is not like a DJI drone, that's essentially impossible to do. Well, it's very difficult to do, especially after September 16th. It's not after September 16th yet, so you could put a remote ID module on there and be good to go on that one. And then I don't think category 2 or category 3 are going to matter because you stipulated that it's under 250 grams. And then we have night operations because this is going to be at night. Presumably the concert's at night. It must complete blah, 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 and it must have lighting visible for at least 3 statute miles. That is not going to happen. You will not be doing that because the concert or the people putting on the concert would be very annoyed at you for distracting from the beautiful concert. So essentially, you will not be complying with this, and you will be taking a chance that the FAA will get you in trouble. Although, Blunty, is there any way that you can think of to get around this?
I mean, you have to fly with anti-collision lights. Past if you're 107, you have to fly with them past, what is it, civil twilight? You don't. Yep. There's no option against it. So,
like one thing there's no.
I mean, who knows if they'll care? We're not talking about enforcement. We're talking about rules.
Right.
And yeah, I believe the rule is no matter what.
Yep. So that's how the FAA would feel about this operation and how we would approach this analysis.
My suggestion of how to solve that is just do a form of that 3 statute mile lighting in LEDs that are cool for the people that are in the crowd, right?
But they're so bright. Like the 3 statute mile LEDs are ridiculously bright.
Who's going to now? How do you know it's 3 statute miles? What metered are you going to bring out?
If you care about complying with the rules instead of trying to skirt the rules, you buy one that the manufacturer rates for 3 statute miles.
Yeah, I'm going to guess if you have a directional indicator based on different colors in the front and the back that you can see from 3 statute miles. I mean, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff that bright at a concert, at least concerts I go to.
That's true. I mean, maybe it's cool to have a lit up drone flying around.
I mean, yeah, it's like a UFO or something, you know?
So if you're a person who wants to do this, in summary, have a 107, have a remote ID module on your drone, or have a drone like the Avata that does remote ID, standard remote ID out of the box. Have it be less than 250 grams and have enclosed props, not open props, and have an LED, have a light on it that fulfills the 3 statute mile requirement if you're flying after civil twilight. Or just do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you said this, but make sure you go re-up your 107 to get your night training if you didn't do that.
Oh, that's a good point. If you got your certification a long time ago, you may not have gotten the night training. Yeah. Great.
Can I make a clarification thing real quick? We don't have to take long on it.
Yeah.
I just, from the FPVFC, if people don't know, I'm part of the FPV Freedom Coalition. We're a CBO with the FAA. What we've been going on based on the information from Kevin Morris presented on Geeksvana and different places, is that essentially you're not responsible as a user if you acquire a drone that does not have remote ID on it from adding a module to make it compliant.
But that sentence didn't parse for me. Can you say that a different way?
So if I can order from China a drone that is not compliant, it doesn't have standard remote ID on it, right? And I get that drone.
But it's supposed to.
But it's supposed to, sure, right? Or maybe they're using some wordage to say it's not, right? But whatever, I've acquired this drone. Then at that point, as a user, I'm allowed to put a module on that drone to make it compliant. And I can do that as a 107 as well. That's what I'm...
We gotta...
So there's this weird separation from manufacturing that happens. And Kevin Morris has been saying this on Geeksvana and other places. He separates the idea of manufacturing and of you as a user needing to comply. And so the understanding that we're going with, what our recommendation is from the FPV Freedom Coalition, you may do something different, but our recommendation is that if you have a drone that you have acquired in any other way, you have a do-it-yourself built drone, right, with no manufacture date because it's built,
right,
or you ordered it and you got it without remote ID, either case, you can put a module on that to comply, do your 107 operations, and no one will actually care.
Let's unwind this a little bit.
Yes.
The first thing, and actually I talked about this on Lamone's live stream. I actually made a mistake. I said the wrong date by accident just because my brain got glitched. But let's start with the claim that it is not, that after September 16th, 2023, you must have standard remote ID on a drone that is doing 107 work. You cannot use a module.
Yeah, to be clear, that is not the rule. That's a symptom of the wording, but we need to be clear about how it comes up. Right?
So that's the first thing I want to do, because you and I have talked about this before, and we have agreed that is the effect of the rule. And people have asked me, well, where does it say that? And I want to get this straight. So can we clarify why that is the case?
Yeah, so how it works is there's a section of the rules that applies to manufacturers of the remote ID rule. And the remote ID rule for manufacturers says that anybody other than this small category of drones, right, has to go through the process and make a standard remote ID drone if you're selling a drone as a complete kit. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the only exceptions to that are like research and education, and then there's one for home built.
Okay,
but the problem is
that's it.
They define home built in the rule, up above at the top of the rule. And the rule for home built says it is used for recreational purposes. So what that means is the only way you could build a drone without standard remote ID, this applies to everyone, no matter what. The only way you could get a drone to be legal is to build it with standard remote ID, unless it's for recreational purposes only. Right.
So the idea that I'm going to build a drone, and because I built a drone, it's obviously not going to have standard remote ID on it. And then I'm going to put a remote ID module on it to make it legal. That doesn't apply unless the usage is recreational. And that's why we say after that the deadline for that is September 16th, 2023. That's why we say after that deadline, you cannot use a remote ID module on a drone build after that deadline to do 107 work.
And I think so the separation we have now, right, is because of Kevin Morris going on Geeksvana, being very public about this. We've emailed him back and forth about this. Mm-hmm. And essentially, the onus is on the manufacturer, right?
Right. So what
To
we're
give
talking
you
about,
a drone with
what
standard
we're talking
remote
about
ID.
now is we're not talking about something like DJI Avata, which has standard remote ID and is compliant. We're talking about something like an iFlight or a GepRC bind and fly, which is delivered to you as a fully built drone ready to fly and should have standard remote ID on it, but doesn't. Right? Okay.
And he said, and Kevin's statement is, if you get that drone, you can put a module on it and do your 107 operations. We're not telling you you can't do that. That's what he's saying, because Kevin Morris is the figurehead speaker for the FAA right now. He's the public communications guy that's going around to different places. He did an interview with Geeks Lana.
His argument is, or his position is, the manufacturer should have delivered to you a standard remote ID drone, but since they didn't, you may do your best to comply and treat it as a home build?
Yes, correct.
Even for 107 operations?
Correct. And the other thing here is that if you ask him about manufacturing specifically, then he will go and tell you that, yes, you can't purchase a drone without standard remote ID, right? It's like a catch-22, but they're not clearing that up. They're just telling you the rule. And our reading of that and our recommendation to people is that when you're moving forward, you just put a module on your drone and comply. And there's two reasons for this. One is because if you build it or not, nobody knows that. These are all DIY drones. Okay?
Right. Maybe I built that iFlight drone by buying the parts separately. No one can prove I didn't.
Or no one can prove either way. So if you say, I got this drone, it wasn't compliant, I made it compliant, right? Instead of saying, I built this drone out of compliance, right? You're not a manufacturer anymore, right? Nobody knows the difference. So the other reason is because if you look at what they're going to do when they come and check you, they do a thing called a ramp check.
Yeah.
And a ramp check by the FAA means I'm going to come out to where you're working with 107, let's say, and I'm going to check your papers. I'm going to make sure you're legal.
Right.
But what are they going to check there? Okay. They're only going to check that you are broadcasting remote ID.
Right.
Not the info in the remote ID, not what type of remote ID is, not if your module is even compliant. They're not allowed to do that.
What do you mean they're not allowed to do that?
You do not have to legally have documentation physically on you to show that your module is compliant.
Well, they could look at your quad, right, and say, oh, that's the Flight Test Easy ID. Let's look up the declaration of compliance for that.
But you don't have to prove that. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to prove that. So if you put a module on there that was bunked from somebody and you bought from somebody, there's no way to prove, you know what I mean? That's not that's happening on
What if
site.
I haven't, and I don't want to, by the way, I don't want the whole live stream to turn into us ranting about remote ID. I know we like to talk about this, but I know the chat doesn't. So let's make sure we wrap this up. What if I've got an Express Alerus, an ESP32 chip that I've coded to broadcast remote ID, but it doesn't have any declaration of compliance, and they come and do a ramp check?
I'm going to suggest that they're not even going to check the module. That's really where we're at right now. But if they do check the module, it's like you just say like, hey, I thought I was legal. I'm broadcasting the signal. What we're hearing is that everything's going to be ahead of this, and it'll be a year to 2 years before they even care about things like this. But we were told specifically in a list of, we asked what would happen in a ramp check, and the response was, you'll need your paperwork, your 107, like all your normal stuff that you would need with any drone. And then you'll just need to be broadcasting a remote ID, and that's all that they care about. So our recommendation from the FPVFC is, instead of saying you can't fly without a standard drone, without spending thousands of dollars to be compliant, without limiting your selection or anything, we would recommend that you slap a module on your drone, do your 107 work, and nobody will care, and you'll be totally fine. Okay.
Well, good advice.
Yes.
All right, let's continue with questions, hopefully not about remote ID. We have are the super chats working? We have no super chats. So this is normally the point where I would start answering super chats. We don't have any. So we're going to keep answering regular chats. Blunty, do you agree? We don't have any super chats.
Yeah, I haven't seen a single one.
Okay, great. I don't like super chats anyway. Let's see here. Nate Petrella wants to know, should I set my analog camera to 4.3 or 16.9? My Fat Shark Recon goggles have a 16.9 display. Is there an advantage to either? Nate, there's two ways to think about this. The first way to think about this is that you want your analog field of view to match your goggle field of view. And the reason for this is that if you have a 16.9 camera and a 16.9 goggle, then the image will fill the screen. And that's nice. You want to use all those pixels that you're paying for. However, you could take a 4.3 camera, and if your goggles support it, they will stretch it to the width of the 16:9 screen. At that point, though, your image is getting stretched and it kind of looks weird, which you may not like, okay? So the other way to think about this is that you want your camera to be using the native aspect ratio of its sensor. So the camera can be designed around a sensor that is 16:9 or 4:3, and when the camera's aspect ratio matches the sensor's aspect ratio, you will get the maximum field of view. So if I have a camera with a 4:3 sensor and I set it to output a 16:9 image, what it will do is it will crop off the top and the bottom of that image, and then it'll zoom it in. Now, whether this is okay or not depends a lot on the field of view of the lens. If you have a lens with a very wide field of view, then maybe cropping in on it is no big deal. But usually you will get the best field of view and the best image because the manufacturer will design the camera and the lens around the field of view of around the aspect ratio of the sensor itself. So my approach is, if I have goggles with a 16:9 screen, I am going to try to buy cameras with a native 16:9 aspect ratio so that I can maximize my field of view and avoid any cropping or stretching. That's not always going to be possible. Like, you're not always, like, a lot of cameras just have a 4:3 sensor, or a lot of cameras, maybe they just have a 16:9 sensor and you don't have a lot of choice. But that's my approach. The ideal approach to me is to pick the field of view that you like. Some people just like a widescreen field of view. Maybe they like a 4:3 field of view. Pick the field of view that you like, buy goggles that have the field of view that you like, and then buy cameras that have a native sensor with the same field of view that you like. So everything is 4:3 or everything is 16:9 all the way through the chain. As soon as you switch field of views, as soon as you set a camera with a 4:3 sensor to a 16:9 field of view, or you send a 16:9 image to a goggle with a 4:3 screen, as soon as you mix aspect ratios, you get some letterboxing and cropping, and things are less good than they could be. That's my take on that. Oh, Jesus. All the super chats came in. Okay, yay, super chats. Here we go. Eric Ashner, thanks for a $5 super chat. Go Horns. I don't know what that means, but yay the Horns, whoever they are. Joe G FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Your Majesty, thanks for $1.69. 69. Odie, thank you for €5. Kevin James, thanks for $2. And Blunty is awesome. Yes, he is. Yes, he is indeed. Kermit FPV, thanks for 50 Norwegian kroner. Let me see. Am I missing questions? Kermit FPV. Yeah, we got a question. Okay, I thought so. Kermit FPV wants to know, all of my drones flip about 50% slower to the right than to the left. I'm using the Pyrodrone gimbals, presumably the Tango 2 gimbals, yeah. One of the magnets had fallen out. I reattached it with double-sided tape. Anyone have any idea? Well, yeah, so what I would do is I would first check your endpoints, right? In the Betaflight receiver tab, make sure that your channel is going equally to the left and the right. Chances are it's not. You may need to recalibrate the gimbals in the Tango 2. You may need to redo the calibration procedure. Even if the magnet has moved or something, the calibration should take that into account. Okay? So my first suggestion, Kermit, would be to recalibrate the gimbals in the Tango 2. And look at the Tango 2 screen when you move the gimbal. Make sure the gimbal goes all the way to the left and all the way to the right. If the Tango 2 doesn't show the gimbal going all the way to the left and all the way to the right, then something isn't right and you got to fix that. After that, go to the Betaflight receiver tab and check that the channel goes 1000 to 2000. And if that's not happening again, it's not going to work for you. Those are the two things you need to do. Blunty, did I miss anybody else who had a question and not attached to their super chat?
I don't think so.
Your Majesty, Odie, Kermit, we got a question here. Thank you for a $5 super chat. I'm looking for a tiny drone for my first drone, considering the Flywoo Firefly 1S HD0 or the Mob 7 HD0. Indoor and outdoor. I would take the Mob 7 for indoor because it has prop guards, and prop guards are good for an indoor drone because you're going to bounce off the walls a lot. Prop guards keep you from being damaged when you crash. They protect your props, and they protect your walls from getting all marked up and pissing off your significant other or yourself if you're the kind of person who cares about that. The Flywoo Firefly 1S is amazing, but to me it's more of an outdoor flyer. You can fly it indoors, especially if you're a very good pilot, but I think it's gonna crash worse in terms of damage to itself and damage to your apartment. Aber the Ham, thanks for a $2 super chat. Aber bought a baby tooth off of me. Thank you for buying the baby tooth off me, Aber. Roger Kjellman, thank you for a 50 Danish kroner. Thanks for Blunty being so friendly and helpful on Discord. He is indeed. More helpful than me these days. I spend a lot of time answering emails and direct messages, and Blunty spends a lot of, well, also that, but spends a lot of time helping on the Discord server as well. Thank you for $5 Canadian from IED. When I set to 3D mode, do I arm with the stick in the middle? Yes. Tried to take off in 3D mode and it did a flip on the spot. That means your motors are spinning the wrong direction. IED, you have to enable bidirectional in BL Heli. What I'm guessing you did is you set beta flight to 3D mode, but you didn't tell the ESC that you wanted the ESC to be in 3D mode. You have to make those changes in both places. So you're going to go into beta flight and enable 3D mode, but also you're going to go into BL Heli, and you're going to set BL Heli to bidirectional or bidirectional reversed. If it flipped on the spot, your motors are spinning the wrong direction. I knew that was going to happen. I freaking knew that was going to happen. I put these freaking sound panels up, and they're falling off my freaking wall. So dumb. You can't see it on camera, but I heard it. So dumb. Jason Natowski, thank you for $10. Want to come to Virginia and help me look for my lost brand new JB QAVS? Oh my God. Jason bought and built a QAVS and lost video while he was flying and flew it into the woods and lost it forever. So what lessons should we learn from this? Well, first of all, my sympathies to you, Jason. But what can we constructively take from this for the future? Number one, if you are a beginner and you lose video, disarm immediately. You'll see experienced pilots who will like lose video and they'll lift up their goggles and they'll fly at line of sight and they'll fly it back home. Or they'll lose video and they'll kind of like level it out and raise throttle to try and climb and get video back. You'll see experienced pilots basically try to use the force to fly the quad without being able to see what it's doing. That's a pro move. And as a beginner, if you lose video, you just disarm and dump it. Number two, always fly the drone somewhere where if you disarm and dump it, it will fall in a place where you can recover it. Don't fly it over the woods, right? Because then when you disarm and dump it, it'll be lost forever. Don't fly it over a lake. Fly it in a big open area where if you have to disarm, it will fall on the ground and you'll get it back. Number three, this is optional, but having a self-powered buzzer on the drone means that if you eject your battery, it will just sit there and go beep, 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 and help you find it. That's worth doing. And number four, spend more time in the simulator, getting comfortable with what's going on. Those are some pieces of advice. Warm Freeze, thank you for a $10 super chat. Is it me or is it really hard to find mid-upper range $400 analog goggles right now? I think the analog goggle market, especially the used goggle market, is not as robust as it once was. These days, there are new goggles in the $600 price range, and there's budget goggles in the $100 to $150 price range, and not much in between. So I don't think it's just you. S. Wiseman, thank you for a $5 super chat. Any recommendations to successfully repair a flight controller with a missing pad by scraping to the trace? AIO broke off the IPEX and took the pin pad. Dude, if it were any other pin than the UFL connector, I'd say go for it. But to be honest with you, like 5.8 gigahertz microwave signals are so sensitive anyway. I know people have done this repair successfully. I know, but like to me, it's gone. Like I wouldn't try and scrape back the trace and solder on an antenna, a 5.8 gigahertz antenna. To me, that's gone. It's just broken and probably just needs to be replaced. Jason Aviator is shouting in the Discord that the focus is out on my camera. I don't think that's right, Jason. Are you sure? Are you having a stroke? Are your eyes okay? The focus looks like really sharp to me. Dude. Okay, hang on. Let's check. It's pretty fucking sharp. I don't know, man. There. Like, that's the beard hairs. This is the eye. That's pretty... funny bone. Looks pretty sharp, dude. Stop shouting at me, Jason. The focus is fine. Check your bit rate or something. The focus is fine, I assure you. Those gray hairs really help with the focus. People are saying the stream quality dropped. I don't know why that would be. I am still sending the same data I've been sending. Everybody is saying YouTube dropped all the way to 144p. A bunch of people are saying that. I don't know. Wow. Why would it have done that? Manually change your video quality. By the way, if you can't tell the difference between an out-of-focus camera and a 144p digital stream, anyway. That is the super chats. We're caught up on super chats as far as I can tell. I believe we are. S. Mueller 26 wants to know, would you go 4S or 6S for a 3-inch freestyle build? For 3-inch, I would stay with 4S. I don't believe that there is much of any advantage to 6S on a 3-inch quad. And part of the reason for that is, let's think about, like, for a 3S, you might have a 650 to 850 milliamp hour 4S battery. Maybe as much as 1,000 milliamp hours. So if you were to go to a 6S battery of the same watt hours or the same weight, we take let's take an 850 4S and multiply it by 0.66. That gives us about a 560 milliamp hour 6S. As you get below about 1,000 milliamp hours, the quality of the cells gets significantly worse. Think about how crappy like a 300 milliamp hour tiny whip battery usually is. It just, and I don't know why this is, but it seems like it's very hard to manufacture good quality small batteries. So for a 4S, you're going to be at about 850 and maybe 1,000 milliamp hours, and you can get decent quality cells. But if you were to go to a 6S, you would be doing 500 to 550 milliamp hour cells, and they're just going to be much worse. In my experience, they're worse quality. In addition, the advantages of the higher voltage really come into play when you have larger motors. The bigger the motors, the heavier the quad, the more heat buildup there is in the motors, the more advantage there is to increasing voltage. So the idea that 6S is better than 4S is only true because 5-inch motors are in the gray area where the additional voltage becomes beneficial. When you go from 6S to 8S on a 5-inch quad, there's definitely a difference, but it's like not as compelling. You're unless you're trying to do like top speed runs in a straight line for typical flight, it's not that compelling. But if you're going up to something like a 7-inch or an 8-inch or a 10-inch, now suddenly you've got bigger motors, bigger props, and the higher voltage starts to become beneficial. So I don't know exactly like where the line is, but for any given motor and prop size, there is sort of an ideal voltage range that makes sense for that motor and prop size. And when you're down in the 3-inch props, 4S is plenty. There's really not a reason to go with 6S, in my humble opinion. And a few other people's opinion as well. Well, let's take this question from TS13FPV. What's the ideal motor size and KV for a 4S 3.5-inch sub 250 gram quad? Guess what? That's an amazing question, and it's the perfect question to give me an opportunity to plug my website. My website is fpvknowitall.com, and there is a page on sub 250 gram drones and parts, and we have a section on motors. And these are the motors that we suggest for 2.5-inch and light 3-inch builds, or for 3.5-inch and light 4-inch builds. So you're talking about 3.5-inch sub 250. Here are some motors that we suggest. God damn it. That's a typo. One second. I'm going to go put a card. Okay, just making a note to fix that typo. There you go. That's the answer to your question. Here they are. (1604, 1804, 1804). Ciati likes a little bit bigger motors. You certainly can run a 3.5-inch prop on the 1404. But, oh, there's Ciati. And if anybody doesn't like these suggestions, you can be mad at Ciati, because he made them. No. Just trying to... He's here in the chat, so you can argue with him about whether these suggestions are right or not. He will not change his mind. He'll just disagree with you. But if you like arguing, you can argue about it. Okay. Let's see here. Bobby Bags wants to know, I have the DJI Goggles 2 and the DJI Goggles V1. Should I update my Vistas to work with the goggles and sell my V1 goggles? So, Bobby, this is a personal decision. I have to tell you, I have switched my personal birds with Vistas on them. I have updated the firmware and switched to the Goggles 2. The lighter weight, smaller size, and OLED screens of the Goggles 2 have been sort of the compelling factors that made me want to switch. There are some arguments that you'll get better performance with the V1. Chris Rosser measured, I believe he measured the Vista to output more power when used with the V2 goggles and the V1 goggles than with the Goggles 2. In addition, the antennas on the V1 and the V2 goggles are circular polarized, which matches what most people have on their Vista. Whereas if you go to the Goggles 2, they will have linear antennas and you will get less range, because unless you put linear antennas on your Vista, which you certainly could do, but most people don't. The latency on the Goggles 2 is worse as well. That's a good point, Blue Jay. The Goggles 2 only go at 100 frames per second. The V1 goggles go at 120 frames per second and have slightly lower latency. All that being said, I have switched to the G2 because of I like the screens better and the smaller size. Blue Jay says the field of view on the Goggles 2 sucks. To me, this is a wash. To me, the Goggles 2 have a plenty big field of view. And if anything, the V1 and the V2 goggles have too big of a field of view. But that's a personal decision, and everybody will feel differently about that. Frequent Flyer RC. Similar question to the previous one about the TBS Tango and the Pyrodrone gimbals. Why does my quad flip to the right faster than it flips to the left? The first thing to check is to go to the receiver tab and move the stick to the left and move it to the right and check your endpoints. If your stick is going to 1000 on the left and only 1800 on the right, then Betaflight will not perceive you as going to full deflection. That's the first thing you got to check. Number 1, calibrate the gimbals on the radio. Number 2, adjust your endpoints, and then it should be fine. There are a couple people asking questions. I want to get this question about my build kit. Why isn't HD0 listed as compatible with the Freestyle kit? So first of all, what people are talking about is... One second. What people are talking about is this kit. So we just published the 2023 version of my DIY kit. This kit has everything you need to build an FPV drone and a very detailed set of videos. It's like 14 videos. It's like 2 or 3 hours of content. Everything you need to get started in FPV. As much hand holding as I could possibly do to try to make things as easy as possible for a beginner. You're going to order the kit, and you also need to buy a receiver, and obviously you're going to need a controller and batteries and a charger. So it doesn't technically have everything you need, but you're going to make those decisions for yourself. We didn't want to make those decisions for you. But the question is, why is it not listed as compatible with HD0? And the reason for that is that the HD0 Freestyle video transmitter just barely fits inside the frame. And I didn't feel good about recommending it. Now, you can put the HD0 Freestyle video transmitter in the back of this frame. It will have about 1 millimeter of clearance to the standoffs, and it will hang out so far over the edges of the frame that I think it is unacceptably likely to get damaged, and I just don't like it and didn't want to recommend it. You could decide to use the HD0 Race video transmitter, which has 20 millimeter mounting, but it only goes to 200 milliwatts, and for a Freestyle quad, I didn't feel like that was enough to recommend. So those are the reasons why it's not listed as compatible. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that it will require some compromises, and I didn't feel like it was a very good idea, and I didn't want to say, yeah, you could do this, it's no problem, and then have you break your video transmitter or have shitty short range and be mad about it. Night Owl wants to know, should we have been using linear antennas all along with digital video links? No. No. Night Owl. I don't know why DJI decided to use linear antennas for the Goggles 2 and the O3.
I can tell you why.
Presumably they had a good reason, because DJI doesn't do this shit by accident. Why do they do it, Plenty? Do you know?
Because their drones have the antennas in a certain direction, and 90% of the people flying their drones are going to fly with the drone straight up. So you're going to get a better signal with linears matching the linears, because they're going to match almost all the time. That's my 2 cents. If you look at the feet of the Avata, there's antennas in the feet of the Avata. If you look at the FPV drone, there's antennas in the feet of the FPV drone. They're all lined up perfectly with linear.
Oh,
so to me,
you're saying that the Avata, et cetera, all the other drones that are going to be used with the Goggles 2 have linear antennas.
Yes.
And so DJI decided to put linear antennas on the Goggles 2 so that they would work best with their own drones.
Well, remember, the Goggles V2 also shipped with linear antennas. The Goggles V1 had circular polarized. The Goggles V2 shipped linear.
Is that true?
Yes, that is true.
That's interesting. I'm not sure. I certainly didn't remember that if I knew that. But the answer is that for a given type of data link, like digital or whatever, you could use linear antennas, you could use circular antennas. There are pros and cons to both, but there's no assumption that a digital bidirectional video link should use circular or should use linear. I don't think that's the case. DJI uses linear. There are various reasons why they might decide to do that. But I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, we should have been using linear this whole time. The most important thing is to match the polarization of the antenna on the aircraft with the antenna on the goggles. Although, that's not even true. Because, like, tiny whoops with little lightweight wire antennas, which are linear, I still prefer to use those with circular antennas on the goggle. Because a circular polarized antenna is not sensitive to the orientation of the other antenna. And so a tiny whoop with a linear antenna on it, if it's going to a linear antenna on the goggles and they are out of orientation because the tiny whoop is doing a flip, you'll get much worse reception. Whereas if you have a circular antenna on the goggles and a linear antenna on the quad, you will always get about 3 dB of loss, but it'll be a constant 3 dB of loss, which is independent of the orientation of the quad, which to me is the right decision. So then what's the best? Is that also true? I mean, if you have the goggles too with linear antennas on them and you have a Vista with a circular antenna, doesn't that same argument hold? Huh. I mean, I guess it does. If I'm going to run tiny whoops with a linear antenna and say that circular antennas on the goggle are a good match for that, should I also make the same argument with a Vista? I guess I should. Interesting. Let's see here. We got a super chat from Kermit FPV saying that the recalibration fixed his controller. Yay! Glad it fixed it. Are used DJI V1 still a good choice? Depends on the price you get them at. They're only going to work with the Vista. They're not going to work, and the RunCam Link and that VTX, whatever name you put on it. They're not going to work with the O3. You would need to get them at a good price, and you would need to be okay with running the cameras that are available for that video transmitter. But I think for the right price, they could be a good choice. Super chat from Kmart FPV here. Thank you for $5, Kmart FPV. I'm on the AOS 5 frame and I'm thinking about switching to something TrueX and more durable. What do you think? I will say that the main weakness of the AOS 5 frame is the lack of durability. Not to say that it's not durable, but that it is less durable than some people would prefer. That frame was designed in some ways for resonance and flight performance first and durability second. The TrueX, I don't think is that important. It's not a dead cat. It's just a rectangle. Dead cat can have some effect on flight characteristics, but rectangle versus square, I don't think it really matters. Okay. Are antenna mounts interchangeable between the V1 and the V2 JB frame? They are. All of the 3D prints from the V1 will work on the V2 and vice versa. Let's see here. Thank you, Lord Hendricks. Good to see you again. A new drone at full throttle makes a sound like when the prop is upside down. What else rattles like that? Lord Hendricks, my guess is going to be that you have a prop that's deflecting. If you have a prop that is being run at a higher RPM than it can handle, you'll get kind of like a sound. It's the best I can reproduce it. And the solution is to use a motor output limit to slow your motors down. Like this will especially happen if you're running particularly high kV motors for your voltage. Some props are just stiffer than others and resist deflection better. So the solution is either use a motor output limit to reduce your max RPM or use different props. Do you think a GPS is necessary? Not necessary. Most of my aircraft don't have GPS. But Betaflight doesn't have great return to home, so if you're flying like waypoint missions and long range, then a GPS is 100% necessary. How can I get to the Discord? Asks Shogun Rock. Ah, you want to know how to get to the Discord. Patrons, show him what he's missing. It's going to take a second for the chat to catch up. Show him what he's missing by not being on the Discord. Oh, so much good stuff. Look at this. Buy, sell, trade. Troubleshooting forums. Lots of different oh my gosh. And most importantly, let's see. Daily cat and daily dog pictures. When was the last time I checked? I haven't checked these in forever. Oh, cat pictures. We have a whole channel for cat and dog pictures. Oh, have I not checked? Wow, that was a long time ago. I don't check these channels very much. The cat and dog channels. I should check them more often. Oh, Belly. That Belly's a trap. Cat in the sun. Oh, that reminds me of my cat. That looks like my cat. I don't have that cat. My cat has passed away. And also dog pictures. This is we got a tactical dog. Sniper dog. Yeah. Good boys. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Good dogs. Okay, so how do you get on the server? Oh, thank you, Lotus, for buying my kit. You get onto the server by joining my Patreon. It costs as little as $2 a month. $2 a month is the minimum. Honestly, and here's the thing. Just between me and you, okay? Anybody who flies FPV, if they really wanted to, could afford to join that server. Sometimes people are like, well, it shouldn't be paywalled. It shouldn't be paywalled. It should be free. And like, okay, I get that. I also like things to be free. But like if it's the one thing I don't give away for free. It's not that much money. And FPV is an expensive hobby. So if you really want it, $2 a month is what it costs to get it. That's up to you. The daily dog pics were enough to get Joseph Musey to join. Well, whatever it takes, Joseph. Yep, there's a link to my Patreon in the video description below. It really means a lot when you guys join it. I guess this is my opportunity to plug the Patreon since somebody asked. It means a lot because, like, literally, it's as much money as 2 props. Do you go through how many? Sometimes people message me and they're like, hey, Bardwell, just bought a new quad and I have a question about it. Sorry I can't join your Patreon. I can't afford it. And like, I don't care. Like, really, I don't care. I will answer your questions, whether you're a patron or not. I don't care. But like, on some level, I'm like, you just bought a quad, but you're going to tell me you're too poor to join the Patreon. Okay, maybe just ask the question. Yeah. So that's up to you. It's up to you. But I'd love to have you as a supporter. Even just a little $2 amount definitely adds up and definitely matters. Because like I have almost 300,000 subscribers. That's a lot of people at $2 a piece. That would be $600,000 a month. Okay. That's probably too much to ask, though. I feel like I could do a lot with $600,000 a month. Not all of those patrons, not all of those subscribers are active. How far away am I from crossing the 300,000 subscriber mark? 296,000 subscribers right now, 297. And I have gained 3,300 subscribers in the last 28 days. By that metric, in 1 month, I will cross 300,000 subscribers. That's insane. I have a prediction. I predict that my channel will never hit 400,000 subscribers. What do you think about that prediction, Blunty? I'm not going to give you any more context.
I understand why you say that.
Tell me why you think I say that. I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I feel like
because it depends on. I mean, I always say bucket because that's part of that thing we looked at. But like, to me, what bucket is there left to fill into, right? You just have new people getting into it and people hopping out and unsubscribing, and YouTube kind of cleans it up every now and then. It seems like there's a saturation point of the hobby, right? Yep. That you're really going to get. And like another channel, like somebody who does video essays can appeal to anybody who likes the thing in the video essay. So that can blow up overnight. One of their video essays could hit and then do millions and millions and people would sub. But that's not really going to happen with your channel because you don't make content like that, right? That's the way I think about it.
Agree. I feel like as long as I make FPV content, which I have always, in the last 3 years, 5 years, whatever, I have seen the plateau coming and thought, well, either there's two ways to grow your channel. And one is if the niche that you're in expands. So like if you make content about underwater basket weaving and suddenly there's a surge of interest in underwater basket weaving and like millions of people take it up, well, your channel's going to grow because the niche that you're in, like little fish, big pond gets bigger, fish gets bigger. Okay, that analogy doesn't, unless you're a carp, which grows with the size of, anyway, never mind. But the other way that you can grow is you can sort of sidestep to a larger niche, right? And so for me, that would be going from FPV content to more general appeal content. Like the easiest and most obvious choice would be to start making content about camera drones or fixed wing planes. But like every time I think to myself, my channel could be bigger and make more money if I made content about camera drones or fixed wings. I think, but I'm not interested in those things. There are two goals of my channel, and one is for me to be a happy person who, like, I'm not going to say like every day I wake up and go, I love my life, I love my job. I mean, it could be worse, but like, I'm not going to like blow smoke up your ass. But at the same time, I have to want to do what I'm doing. And I'm just not like that interested in those things. So I think that the FPV market as a whole is not going to expand enough to get me another 100,000 viewers. And I think I'm pretty close to saturation in terms of how many people in FPV who like my content. Like some people in FPV just think I'm a jerk and hate my face and don't want to hear me talk. I know it's weird. It's weird to me too, but it's true. How many people who are in FPV who like me and will like my content are not already subscribed? There's this constant little trickle of new people coming in, right? And there's people dropping out who stay subscribed. Like, I don't have 300,000 active subscribers. And that's a fact, because if you look at the actual view count on my videos, the number of views that my videos are getting is basically staying the same. I mean, I would have to go back and do more analysis to really know. So my subscriber count is going up. And what that represents is new people coming into the hobby who are subscribing, and old people stopping watching content, or sometimes people say, well, I learned everything I needed to know and now I don't watch your content anymore because your content is focused on teaching people things and I already know those things. And that's fine. I see that as a win. And I just don't think that I think that at 300,000, you know, or at 3,000 a month, you know, 100,000 divided by 3,000 is 33 months. It's going to take 33 months to get to 400,000. That's 2.7 years. And I'll probably still be doing this in 2.7 years. But I'm not sure that, like, I think I'm going to see that continue to plateau. Because, yeah. I don't know. We'll see if I'm right. What are you going to do to celebrate the 300,000? I don't know. Probably nothing. Because I'm a terrible YouTuber. Like, I should do some big... I'm just going to make the same videos I always make. And, like, just keep doing my thing. I celebrated 100,000. I made a big deal out of 100,000. Because it was a real milestone. And then 200... Like, if I ever hit 1 million, which I never will... I might celebrate, but from 100 to 200, I'm like, meh. Anyway. Kids, continue with the questions. Blue Jay, thank you for a $5 super chat. I'm not a patron. Well, I appreciate the $5 donations. Direct donations are the best way to support the channel other than Patreon. The worst way to support the channel is to watch ads. And I don't mean to sound ungrateful. If you watch my channel and you watch ads, that does add up. But, like, I've done the math, and from a typical unique viewer, I get, like, what was it? It was like, I'll do the math right now. Hang on. Because I can look up the number of unique viewers. It's like a penny. Analytics. How can I see unique viewers? Unique viewers. Okay. 2 cents. Based on my analytics, in a given month, one viewer pays me 2 cents from watching ads. So that $5 contribution is years worth of ad revenue from you. So thank you for that. Do you think in 2 years' time FPV will have a significant breakthrough? Because I sold my goggles to and everything, and I'm going to start again in 2025. Hard to say. DJI will probably have a new FPV video transmitter out in 2 years. Maybe not. Unknown. Very, very interesting and unknown. Will I get in trouble if I do a Part 107 mission without a visual observer covering all my blind spots? No. You will not get in trouble. The chances of the FAA noticing or caring are very, very small. The FAA would like you to have a visual observer covering all the blind spots. You will not get in trouble. I feel very confident saying, unless you are just the most unlucky person in the world, you will not get in trouble. Is it worth it to switch to the Chimera 7 V2 Pro? Well, it depends. What are you switching from? Without knowing the answer to that question, I can't say. Sorry. Cheesy way to answer the question. Did they change the amount of money creators get from Super Chats, or do they still take a third of it, or whatever? I don't think that's changed, King Click. If I have 2550 kV motors I have been running on 4S, what would I motor limit to run on 6S? It's very simple to answer that question. The way you answer that question is you take 6S divided by 4. You take a ratio. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. Or, wait, we need to go the other way, because we're going to reduce the kV of the motor. 1.5 would be going the other way. My bad. 4 divided by 6 is 0.66. So your motor output limit to make a 4S motor have the same RPM on a 6S battery is 0.66 or 0.67. Jeremy Sarge says, wow, 1/3 of Super Chat money. That's so wrong. Jeremy, I respectfully disagree. I'm going to stick up for YouTube on this one. And I hesitate because, well, there's a lot of reasons to bash YouTube for some of the things they do. But YouTube provides the platform. YouTube is doing payment processing. YouTube has servers that are currently streaming this information to hundreds of people. YouTube deserves to get paid for the services that they provide. They're providing a valuable service to me. If I had to set up my own website to host these videos, and the community that YouTube brings would be completely missing, never mind the technical challenges of self-hosting all your videos. YouTube provides a lot of value. Without YouTube, I wouldn't have my current career. I would have a different career. And taking 1/3 of the like, it's easy to think those super chats should belong to the creator. The audience is rewarding the creator. But YouTube this is a case where they're providing a lot of value, and they deserve to be compensated for it. So I have no problem paying YouTube a % of ad revenue and a % of super chats. I am obviously I would always like to make more money, but I feel like I get so much value out of YouTube in terms of what they provide to me that the amount of money that take is between 1/3 and 45%. Like, depending on which revenue stream, they take like a little less than half to about 1/3. And that's like more power to them. We got a super chat here from Christopher Conkright. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Is there a module for the Fat Shark Dominator HD to run analog or other systems? There is not. The Walksnail goggles, the Avatar goggles, the Fat Shark Dominator HD, those are all the same thing, whatever you want to call them. They cannot run analog or other systems. They only work with Walksnail video transmitters, period. Focus, thank you for a $5 super chat. You do what you are passionate about. Thank you. Yeah, I saw your comment, Focus, about how you changed branding, and that's cool. I gotta say, I hate thinking of YouTube as a business. And what I mean by that is, like, I like trying to game the system to get the most, like, views and ad revenue and dollars that I can off the content that I make. So if I make a video about topic X, I actually kind of enjoy the process of getting good at YouTube and figuring out how to make the thumbnail and the title as good as they can be to get the maximum views. I like the process of thinking, how can I structure the video to give the user the most value, and also, like, where can I put my call to action where I ask them to be a patron? Like, how can I structure those things to maximize the number of people who decide to become a patron or otherwise, like, compensate me? Like, while still not, like, descending into clickbait and abusive, shitty behavior, while still, like, feeling good about myself. I enjoy that stuff. But I don't like thinking, what content should I make to get more views? The content that I want to make, to me, it's like, that's the kind of thing where I would get up in the morning and go, oh God, I hate my life. I hate my job. because to me, the making of the content feels very personal. And so I want to make content that I'm excited to make. I don't want to focus group the content and say, if I made content about X, I would get more views, so that's what I have to do. I would just go work for somebody else at that point. If I want a focus group to tell me what content I should make, I could just have a boss who tells me what content to make. And I don't like either of those things. I will say, sometimes I make content and like it gets a shitload of views and I'm like, wow, why did I make this content before? But how do you know what that's going to be? It's very hard. Anyway. Let's see here. We got a question here from... No filter. We got a question here from Isav in the Discord. Thank you for being a patron, Isav. Is changing altitude need to change tune as well? I have a perfect flying quad in my usual location, which is like 500 meters from sea level, but I went to sea level. I had hot motors and D-term oscillation. This is a very interesting question, and I'm so glad you asked it. Yes. Air density changes your PID tune. Now, I'm surprised that 500 meters made that much of a difference. I wouldn't think that 500 meters would make that much of a difference, but maybe it did. But think about it. If I am at sea level and I do a PID tune, the air is literally thicker. My motors will work harder and make more thrust, and therefore my PID gains are going to be lower. Okay? Because the more thrust the motors make, the lower your PID gains generally. If I take that same quad and I go from sea level up to, say, 10,000 feet or 11,000 feet. Blunty, what altitude is Denver at? You lived in Denver, right?
5,280 feet. And I can tell you it's 12% loss of thrust.
12? Wow. I'm surprised. I thought it was higher than that. I guess 10,000 is
I did the math with thrust.
Okay, so 5,280 feet, 12.5% loss of thrust. That's actually really great to know that number. Thank you for throwing that out. If I go to 5,800 feet and get a 12.5% loss of thrust, my PID gains are gonna change. And likewise, if I go the other direction and get 12.5% more thrust, my PID gains are gonna change. Now, most of the time, people aren't going to notice a difference because most people don't PID tune to the absolute edge. Most people will PID tune and there'll be a little bit of give in their PID tune. And so if the thrust changes, they're going to maybe notice a little difference in their tune, but they're not going to see like hot motors or oscillation. But if you've tuned a quad to the absolute edge at high altitude and you take it even maybe just 500 meters to a lower altitude, you're going to see a difference. And so what you're describing is 1,000% plausible. I'm surprised that 500 meters made it that much of a difference, but it is entirely plausible. And, I'm going to just guess that you tuned it to the absolute edge, and going 500 meters lower in altitude made the difference. So what can you do about this? Change your props. Like professional pilots, like Mr. Steele has different props that he uses at high altitude. You can go to a lower pitch prop and the same PID tune will apply because you'll just make less thrust. You could go to a little bit smaller prop. For a tall mountain dive, should you lower your PIDs to make sure you have okay motor temps at the end? Maybe. I mean, if I was concerned about mountain diving, I wouldn't be PID tuning like to the 98th percent. I would PID tune to like the 92nd percent. These are made up numbers. There is no way to actually know. But conceptually speaking, I wouldn't push the PID tune to the absolute ragged edge because number one, you want that headroom as the altitude changes. And number two, you're not racing, right? You're mountain cruising. So you don't maybe need, you're not doing ultra aggressive, high speed, fast turns where a PID tune really applies. Google says 500 meters to sea level is 94% difference in pressure. Interesting.
Pressure or density? Remember, we're looking at density.
Oh, good point.
Right.
Density altitude is really what we should be characterizing, isn't it? Is that right, Blunty?
Either that or actual air density. I think it's actual air density, right?
Oh, well, density altitude takes into account temperature, but we're going to assume temperature is the same. That's the other thing. Temperature makes a difference. If you tune on a cold day and you fly on a hot day, two things are going to change. One, the ambient temperature. Your motors are going to be hotter simply because the fluid in which they are operating, the air, is hotter. And so they will run hotter. But number two, the hotter air will be less dense, and therefore your PID tune is going to change. All right, that's a really, really fun topic that almost nobody cares about because most people are not running their PID tune close enough to the edge to notice these differences. Rauk FPV wants to know, what's my daily driver? It's the Boxer. I'm daily driving the Boxer right now. Air is a gas, not a fluid. King Kleck asks. I mean, okay. But gases are also fluids, aren't they? I guess it's a gas, not a fluid. Is there any context in which gases are treated as fluids? I just need to be right. I just need to have any context in which I would have been right for me to go, oh, well, clearly you don't hang out with the right kind of people.
I mean, I think if you're like in an ideal environment in an engineering conversation, you could say something like that. But I think if we're talking about the real world, it's not the case.
I would say that there's a difference between a fluid and a liquid. Gases are clearly not liquid. Liquids and gases are mutually exclusive. But I would say that a gas is a fluid. Well, let's just ask Google. Yes! Yes! Google says I'm right! Liquids and gases are both fluids because they can be made to flow. I love being right. Dervi says gases are compressible, fluids are not. Liquids. Liquids, my friend. Liquids. Okay. Okay. That's all I need from life, is to just feel like I was right. Is the Gep RC Mark V a good starting point for freestyle and long range? The Mark V is a great drone. 5 inches are not great for long range. If you care about long range, you want like a 7-inch would be my recommendation. Or go down to an ultralight 4-inch. Those are good choices. 5 inches are really, they're in a bad location for long range. They can be made to long range, but that's just not what they're great at. So the Mark V is a good first FPV drone if you're interested in freestyle. I don't recommend that beginners get into long range, because you're just very likely to lose your quad, and that sucks. I recommend that beginners only fly where if they crash, they could recover their drone, because the chances of a beginner crashing are so much higher. I would say off the top of my head that before you start flying long range or medium range, and let's say, what's the definition of long range or medium range? If you crash and you can't just walk to where your drone is and pick it up, that's the line. Okay? Arbitrarily, I'm deciding that's the line. I would say somebody should put in 6 months. I just made that number up. Like, you need to have enough experience to go, oh, I lost video and I have no idea why. My quad fail-safed and I have no idea why. I crashed my quad and then 3 weeks later it fell out of the sky because the motor was damaged in the crash and I didn't notice, and then I burned the motor or the ESC. You need to have these experiences so that when you're flying long range and you don't have the option to retrieve the quad, you will go, oh, no, I shouldn't fly today. I crashed and I damaged my motor. And now I know that I can't just take off and go fly. And I'm going to lose my quad. And I just feel like you need that experience before you fly long range. If you have so much money that you just lose a quad and don't care, yeah, fly long range. Don't fly over people, though. But even then, like, if you crash and, like, your lipo light's on fire and you start a forest fire, that's bad. Don't do that. So long range, medium range is, like, it's a bigger deal than you think. And beginners shouldn't do it, in my humble opinion. Beginners, there's plenty to excite you flying short range, close range, and really getting good at it. We got a question here from Steve Tricks. This is a very interesting question. My windings are unraveling. Can this be repaired? Okay, so first of all, Steve, this can't be repaired. Except if you take the motor apart and rewind it. And you shouldn't do that. It's just, it's economically completely impractical unless you just feel like rewinding motors because that sounds fun to you. This motor cannot be repaired. What I see here, though, is that there is abrasion of the windings. Do you see that these windings, the motor is spinning and is rubbing and cutting and grinding away the windings. And what that tells me is that I think that Night Owl has the right call. The O-ring between the bell and the stator is allowing the bell to come down and grind away the windings. This little piece of the stator, as the motor spins, is grinding away the windings. Ciati suggests that the rubber O-ring has deteriorated. So, to me, this is a defect in the motor design. Okay? Some people would say, well, the O-ring is a consumable part. No. I disagree. Because, like, if you have a bad bearing, you're going to hear that the motor sounds bad, but the motor is not going to just self-destruct. And you could decide to put a new bearing in or get a new motor or fly the motor with a bad bearing. But if the O-ring degrades, there is no way for you to really know that that's happening. And if the motor tolerances are so tight that when the O-ring degrades, the bell destroys the windings, like that's how you're going to know that the O-ring has degraded and then the motor is destroyed. So to me, and like I've had iFlight Zing motors. I've had Zing 2207 motors. I've seen them and flown them for years. And the O-ring doesn't get to that point where the windings are destroyed. So if you have, and you're saying, Steve Tricks is saying, like, this keeps happening to me. It's not just like the motor took one good hit and this happened. Like, this is just a repeated thing. Steve Tricks, to me, I would stop buying these motors. Now, I'm not saying that no one should buy these motors, but I'm saying that whatever you're doing to these motors, these are not a good fit for you. And I wonder if the motor should have more tolerances, more spacing between the bell and the windings, so that if the O-ring degrades, the windings are not destroyed. Like, you have clearly beat the shit out of this motor. Okay? I don't want to like act like this motor has not been abused to hell and back. It definitely has. So like on some level, this motor lived a good life, and now it's time to say goodbye. But if the motor was designed with a little more tolerance, maybe we could have replaced the O-ring and kept flying it. I don't know. Interesting. Those are Halo. What motors are these? Halo 2450 kV. Camera butter Halo motors. It looks like debris got between the bell and the windings. I'm not so sure about that. I don't know. I can't know for sure.
People are asking about the O-ring. He put a picture of the O-ring in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Let's show that. Here's the O-ring. So yeah, clearly we know the O-ring degraded. And I would say that maybe camera butter should find a more durable O-ring, or maybe the motor should have just a little more spacing between the bell and the windings, so that when the O-ring degrades, you don't immediately just self-destruct the motor.
Another couple people were also asking, isn't it the case that if that O-ring can compress and touch the windings, doesn't that mean it can do that when it just gets in a crash?
Well, I guess it depends on how much the O-ring compresses, but sure.
Right. I mean, it just seems kind of weird in general for there to be an ability for the bell to touch the windings like that, right? Like,
I wonder what camera butter would say. I mean, maybe this is a manufacturing defect. Maybe the motor is supposed to have more spacing and doesn't. People are pointing out
this is an endorsement of the motor because the motor's so beat up.
Right. I certainly could see that argument that the fact that this motor finally gave up the ghost after being subjected to this much damn abuse, the fact that it survived this long means people should buy this frickin' motor. I don't disagree. I mean, this motor has clearly seen a lot. Anyway, I guess we don't know for a fact that the top of the bell is what destroyed it. But he said he keeps destroying these motors in this exact same way. And that makes me think that, like, it's something related to the design of the motor.
That all right, still anyway. Flies.
Yeah. Stevetrix says it still flies. I don't know how it could fly, Steve. I can literally see broken windings right here. I can literally see the broken windings, dude. There is no way that this motor is not down a phase. You should not fly this motor. It literally has broken windings. Ian says it looks like there's a fair amount of space. It makes me wonder if something got into the motor and rubbed it away. Maybe. I mean, I would want to double check whether the top of the motor is what's grinding away at the top of the windings. All right. If you ran your HC0 transmitter into a signal booster, would you get additional range? Yes. HD0 is a unidirectional communication. You 100% can run it into an amplifier. Assuming all legal requirements are fulfilled, you can totally do that. My O3 air unit only shines green, and I can't bind it with my Integra. Do you know why? Thank you for 5 Swiss francs. I don't know why. I don't, Blunty, you don't know this either. I don't know why I'm asking you, but I'm not sure, so I'm reaching out. I'm phoning a friend. There's no special firmware that's necessary to bind to the Integra, right? Like,
not that I know of.
It's the same firmware version.
Because it releases at a different time, but as far as I know, everything should be the same. Yeah.
Yeah. I whenever I try and update firmware on a new O3, it's always like, nope, you got the latest.
Make sure you're in the right mode in the Integras, right?
Ooh, that's good. See, phone a friend always works. So the Integra can be in several modes. Same for the goggles too. Same for the V2 goggles. There's the Avata mode. There's the O3 mode, etc. You need to go, I think it's in the status menu, and there's an option in the menu to switch modes. If you're in the wrong mode, you will not be able to bind to the O3. That's the number one reason for this to be happening. Yeah. Blunty, I see someone's trying to ask you an HVAC question in the chat. About radiant flooring. People have picked up on the fact that you used to do HVAC professionally.
Yeah, I was discussing in the Discord with him the other day some HVAC stuff because he was getting a unit worked on.
Yeah.
So.
You haven't done a lot of radiant flooring though, huh?
No, heat in general, I've done just a little bit of gas, but gas is a lot scarier to me than electrical because electrical is a known quantity, but gas is kind of out there and you have to sniff for it. And you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, gas is scary to me. Things go boom a lot easier.
Yeah. No, we don't want booms. I just got a quote to put a mini split. We have an upstairs attic loft. It's a living space, but it would be an attic if it weren't a living space. It's finished though, but it gets hot as hell, and we only have a single zoned. So like we have to set the main floor to like 68 degrees to have the upstairs loft be like 73 degrees or something ridiculous. And then of course the basement is frigid and there's condensation on the registers and it's just a bad scene all around. So we started getting quotes to put a mini split up there.
Have you considered doing that yourself?
Well,
I know you're DIY kind of guys.
That's what people always say about mini splits. So, like, to install the mini split, you have to drill a hole in your wall, which I'm not scared to do. You have to run the condensate line and the coolant line and the signal line down your house, which is pretty doable. But the part, I guess I could do all that part. You have to run a 220 line in conduit. You could hire an electrician to do that for you, though. Like install a new breaker and run a line, a power line. I don't know.
It's easier than you think. It depends on what they're charging you, though, right? There's a cost to ease of installation and backup warranty sort of thing, which I understand.
Right, you would have no warranty for sure.
Yeah,
like nobody's going to warranty a self job. So I've gotten 2 quotes so far. It's an 18,000 BTU single head split unit. I got 2 quotes so far. The first quote was like $11,000 and the second quote was like $7,000. For the second quote was for like a Mitsubishi, which is a good quality unit. I don't know the exact model. It was a 20 SEER. They originally quoted us as 16 SEER. And I was like, is that the best you can do? And he was like, he didn't say this, but he was like, no, we just always quote the 16 SEER because no one wants to pay for the higher efficiency. But I was like, well, tell me what, just let me cross shop. But it's like $7,000.
And that's for a single head?
Single head, 18,000 BTU, Mitsubishi.
And so that's probably $3,000 in labor, $4,000 in labor. I'm going to go.
And like 1,000 of that, 600 or 700, maybe 1,000 of that is the electrical work, which I probably wouldn't do. I mean, I wouldn't get it. I wouldn't want to, like, even if I could do it, I wouldn't want to risk failing an inspection or some shit like that. So that's $2,000 for them to install the thing. I don't know. Is that worth the warranty?
I don't know. That's sort of on you, and you'll worry you fucked it up, right? Like all that. That's I understand where people come from, but I just know it's really not like you are 100% possible. It's super easy. Like you could 100% handle it, no problem.
Like you don't have to. Yeah. Isn't there like you don't have to like, because you're dealing with compressed coolant, right? So like, don't you have to like purge the lines and all that bullshit?
Yeah, but I think it's. As far as I know, the way they work now is that, and some of the chat points out, some are pre-charged and some are not. But the way some of them work is all the charges in the outside unit when you get it, you hook up all the lines and everything, and then you just turn the taps, and it will push everything through the line. And I think you may have to pull a vac still on the.
How do you do that?
On the lines, you just hook up a Schrader valve, and then you hook up a vacuum pump, and then you just hit vacuum pump until it gets down to 500 microns. It's super easy.
I don't have a vacuum pump. Do I need to buy a vacuum
pump? $100. Yeah. Oh.
This is starting to sound like yeah. Interesting. It's worth thinking about. That's a tough one. That's worth thinking about.
Yeah. It's something to think about.
Oh, the other thing about it is there's like I'm learning this. I'm for the chat who doesn't know, we're just talking about my homeowner stuff. We're ignoring all the questions. I'm putting a deck on that the cabin outside, and I've been learning a lot about building a deck. And I have some basic carpentry skills before, so this is an area where I feel like I can muddle through. But there's like a lot of mistakes, and I've spent the last month browsing Reddit r/Dex subreddit and looking at the ways that they roast people for doing it wrong. And I've realized there's a lot of like little mistakes people make that they don't, that are not obvious. And it makes me wonder. People are like, oh yeah, install the mini split. It's super easy. And I'm like, what mistakes am I going to make that I don't know that I'm making? I don't know. Anyway. Well, something to think about. Is this the wider target audience you were talking about earlier? Yeah. I'm going to break out. You know, if I made a video about it, I could write off. No, I can't. This doesn't work like that, sadly. Let's try to get a few more questions in. We've got 10 more minutes in the stream. We'll try to get a few more questions in. We got a super chat, Blunty, here, but it's not queued. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I've been talking to you, so I'm working my way down the list again.
Oh, okay, no problem. I'll let you catch up. Just hire a designer for the deck, FPV newbie. Yeah, no shit. So first of all, I didn't want to hire somebody. I wanted to do it myself. And second of all, a deck design is easy. It's not a complicated deck. There's a million websites that'll design a deck for you. I was out this morning digging 18-inch by 24-inch holes in the ground for the footers. It's the actual physical work that's the fun part. Anyway. Callie FPV, thank you for a $2 super chat. Intro music is cool. Dude is gay, though. Callie FPV, I can't decide if you're saying he's literally gay or if he's, like, quote-unquote gay. I don't know how to interpret that. Whether he's literally gay or, in which case, who cares? I don't care. It doesn't really matter. Or if you think he's just like lame, which is also ableist. So all the words that we want to use to disparage people apparently are not good to use. Who knew? However you mean that, I disagree. He's as cool as hell. And you shut up. And his music is awesome. So, but thank you for $2. Let's see. What questions are we going to get? We have like 40 questions in the queue. We're not going to get to those questions in the next 9 minutes. If I didn't get to your question, please just email me. jb@joshuabardwell.com is my email address. I answer almost all of the emails I get. Sometimes it takes a little longer than others because I get a lot of emails. And lately I'm apparently doing, I'm installing a deck and installing a air conditioner. So there you go. But if I don't get to your question, please just email me, even if I can't read it on the live stream. That's just how it is. Let's see here. What are we going to do? I keep damaging motors the same way. The windings start to unravel. We got that question. Anybody using something to hook goggles up to simulator wirelessly? Is there HDMI to analog or something like that exists? Yes, Nutty Brewer. There are HDMI to analog converters, and then you run those into a video transmitter. You can't run it into HD0 because HD0 doesn't have a separate input, but you could do analog. The problem is the latency is not going to be great. However, some people have done it and consider the latency to be acceptable. Are there ELRS receivers that are incapable of inverting a signal? Trying to connect my Beta FPV Lite 2.4 to the old Tiny Hawk 2 S-Bus pad, but 1.6 configurator doesn't show the invert option. 1.6? I'm pretty sure that the invert option was added in ELRS 2.0. So update your firmware.
But configurator version currently is 1.6. That's the current version of configurator.
Oh, the 1.6 configurator. Well, what firmware version is on the receiver? Or has the invert option been moved to the web UI, Blunty?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he's saying he's trying to flash with the new firmware, and it doesn't show the invert option.
Yeah, but has it been moved as a runtime option to the web UI? Is the question. I don't know the answer. Check in the web UI, see if the invert option is there. Also, ExpressLRS 3.3 just has legit S-Bus output if you prefer. Let's see here. Got that one. Do we know the side effects of goggle antennas being so close to your head? Tiny House Creatives, you're talking about the goggles transmitting signal to the quad, which, by the way, analog video systems and HD0, the goggles do not transmit at all. There is no effect of a receiver antenna being close to your head. So if you're using analog or HD0, the question is moot. The goggles are not transmitting. There is no effect. You could ask the question of whether having electronics so close to your head has some effect. And the canonical answer would be no. It's been tested. It has no effect, no meaningful effect. Now, you could decide. Some people are like, well, I don't trust the government to tell me what's safe. I'm not putting any electronics next to my head. And if you feel that way, then, you know, it's a free country. Do what you want. But there's no actual evidence to really support that. The question is, what about if you have DJI or walk snail where the goggles are transmitting and transmitting as much as 1 watt? And the argument, I have 2 arguments to that. Number one, the argument is that there are standards for radio exposure. There are exposure limits, amount of power versus time, and so forth. And the goggles that we use, the FPV goggles that we use, certainly if you are not wearing them for just hours at a time, like if you fly a pack for 2 or 3 or 5 minutes and then unplug and take them off and go do something else and then put it back on. But even if you are wearing them for extended periods of time, they don't reach what is considered to be a meaningful threshold where there would be health effects. And again, you could say, well, I don't trust the government to, and you know, that's your decision, but essentially no big deal. As Kilo Zebra points out, if we have 1 watt of energy, we could easily calculate how, so first of all, this is non-ionizing radiation, so it's not going to give you superpowers or cancer. Non-ionizing radiation does not damage cells. All it does is it raises the temperature of the tissue. And we could easily calculate how many degrees 1 watt of power could raise the temperature of your tissue, of your flesh, and it's not very much. Suffice you go out and you stand in the sun and you're receiving many, many watts of power up against your skin in the visible spectrum and the ultraviolet spectrum and the infrared spectrum. It's not a big deal, is the current understanding. It might be a coincidence, but ever since earlier this year when my crew started to use ExpressLRS, I am getting micro failsafes with Tracer. Wow. It's plausible that a bunch of people flying ExpressLRS would cause micro failsafes with Tracer. They're both using 2.4 gigahertz. Both ExpressLRS and Tracer. No. Tracer uses FLRC, not LoRa. I was going to say both of them use LoRa, and so they should be relatively immune to interference from each other, but that's not true. Tracer uses FLRC. It does have a LoRa mode, but most people aren't using it. That's entirely plausible. Time to switch away from Tracer. No, I'm joking. Oh, Stevetrix says where's that question? A couple of your patrons have their own frames. Would you review them? I would not review a product simply because a person who made the product was my patron. I don't take money to review products almost as a matter of principle. I was recently on the FPV Spill the Tea podcast, and we got into talking about some of the economics of FPV, and like Like if somebody came, like obviously everybody has a number. If somebody said, hey, I've got this new product and I want you to review it. And I was like, I'm not that interested. And they were like, well, look, I'll pay you $2,000. I'd probably do it. That would be hard to say no to. I'd probably find a way to make... I mean, I would disclose it. I'd be like, hey, guys, listen. Like, think about the Raid Shadow Legends stream. I was just like, hey, guys, I wouldn't normally do this, but they paid me $1,000 to do a live stream where I play Raid Shadow Legends. And, like, I'd be an idiot to say no to that, right? But if it's interesting, I might review it. There's a couple things that go into, like, reviewing a product for me. Like, I really want the product to be sustainable. So like if it's if it's like one guy and he's cutting frames in his basement, and if I do a video about the product, he's going to get 150 orders that he can't fill. Like that's not setting anybody up for success, and I might decline to do that. It's a pretty interesting stream. Is that your stream? Or is that your not stream? Is that your frame? Stevatrix? Whose frame is this?
Exon, I think. It's the Exon Designs guy, the guy you were trying to figure out the things from.
Oh, the funky washers. This is a render, though. Does he actually make it? I mean, no offense, but is this basically just an Apex Evo? Like the other question that I ask when I look at frame, I mean, it's a good looking frame. But the other question that I ask when I like think about whether I'm going to review a product is like, what is it that makes this interesting? And like my general rule is there has to be one sort of unique or interesting thing about the frame that makes it stand out. Yeah. Anyway, interesting. I mean, I'd consider it. All right, folks, it is 3:01 p.m. That means the stream is over. If I didn't get to your question, email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. I believe I got all the super chats, and Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming, and he is posting a link to his stream. Where is it? He is going to be streaming, and he's posting the link to it. He's going to stream at 3 o'clock, just as soon as I get off of the freaking air. But that is going to do it. Blunty, good seeing you again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will be back tomorrow, won't we?
We will be back tomorrow at, what time? 7?
8 p.m.
Yeah.
8 p.m.
8 p.m. EST.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is going to do it. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great stream, Ciotti. Bye, everybody.
Oh my God, it's so